Good afternoon, OHR, and welcome to this webinar. This is exclusively for staff and supervisors in the Office of Human Resources, and we're going to talk about the new performance management process that we're going to be following this fiscal year, which goes through June of 2018. So it's intentional that we don't have webcams today, and I'm Amanda Wolford, an HR consultant in Leadership and Talent Development, also known as LTD. And I'm joined by my supervisor, Rosie Berry, who's the manager of leadership assessment and development. And then Brandon Sullivan, the director of LTD, is also here with us to help answer questions. So please note that this webinar is being recorded, and you'll receive a separate email with a link to the recording by early next week. And the recording will also be posted on the Supervisory Development course site, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And since you're probably going to have questions about the process, which is great, and we definitely encourage questions, please use the Q&A feature on the right side of the screen. And if you have any technical difficulties during this presentation, you can chat or send a question privately to Olga. So to get started, we're going to take a quick poll. And so if you don't see the poll once it's launched, you may need to expand that feature on the right-hand side of your screen near the chat feature. And if you can't figure this out, that's okay. It's just information that we will start from. So the poll question is, which of the following describes your current experience with performance management? And select all that apply and feel free to be honest here. So your choices are A, it's more frustrating and time-consuming than productive and helpful. B, it's an administrative exercise that isn't directly tied to the day-to-day work. C, it consists primarily of listening to what I did wrong. D, it's generally a productive, helpful process, but it doesn't really make a difference. Or E, I love it, it motivates me. So go ahead and make your selections. Again, you can click all that apply, and we'll give a couple more seconds before we close it. So the poll is getting closed. Most of you responded with B, it's an administrative exercise that isn't directly tied to the day-to-day work. That's very understandable. And then there was a close second with A and D. So it's frustrating and time-consuming, and it can be productive, but it doesn't really make a difference. So although I'm not happy to hear are the things that you're experiencing right now, it's actually okay, because a lot of what you said falls into the fact that traditional performance management is what's currently occurring with performance management. So in OHR, we're here to change that. And so let me explain what that means a little bit more. So traditional performance management looks like this. There's a lot of activity that happens at the beginning of the year when annual goals are set, and another activity spike at the end of the year when the formal performance evaluations are delivered and the merit pay decisions are made. So why do we do it this way, or why have we always done it this way? And it's actually just the way that we've always done it, and it came from decades ago. Think back to World War II. And so it's gone through several iterations since then, and we think that we have some good changes here to alleviate some of that. So what we'd rather have performance management help you with is to develop and grow and improve communication between you and your supervisor, align your individual work to achieve OHR and university goals, and to also help you and your teams perform to your highest potential. So the problem with that traditional performance management is that it doesn't always accomplish these things, because it typically focuses most on that performance review at the end of the year. And so for it to actually be successful, performance management must be more than a formal human resources process. It should actually be more about your everyday experiences. So over the past several years, there have been major advances in our understanding of how to achieve the goals of performance management. And leading public and private sector organizations such as University of Arizona, Cargill, or Google, they've changed their approach and transformed performance management from a demotivating and time-consuming process to a set of practices that creates a culture of environments. So we want to benefit from what they've learned. And so instead of just 1 or 2 spikes of activity, we're going to support your performance during the whole year. And it's not more work than you're already doing today, because the work will be evenly distributed throughout the year. And you're probably doing a lot of this already with your supervisor. It's just being more intentional about the performance management process throughout the year. So this year in OHR, we're going to have, at a minimum, we'd like you to have monthly check-in opportunities so you can stay on track with the work all year long instead of waiting until the end of the year to discuss. So, and then thinking about the words performance management or regular check-ins, if you feel sort of scared about that or nervous, you can just relax because this new process is not intended to prepare you to get bad news, but rather to help prepare you for the regular conversations that you're going to have, also known as check-ins, with your supervisors that will be starting soon in OHR. And so these regular conversations will be about your goals and your successes and your development needs and how all that comes together to help you and the Office of Human Resources be more successful in reaching our goals as an organization. And you'll be getting some additional tools to help you prepare for and be successful in those conversations. So you already took the first step in this process if you were at the June 6th all staff meeting for OHR, and we started talking about how to develop goals. And if you haven't taken any action on that yet, don't worry, we'll cover that shortly. But before we go into details on our new process, I just want to share how the process came about. So I'm going to have Rosie do that for you.
Thanks, Amanda. Really, this approach is a logical outcome and application of the work that we've been doing in LTD on supervisory development. One of the modules in our supervisory development course that's been developed over the last few months is managing and evaluating performance. About the time that module was released, we were going through the 16-17 performance evaluation process within OHR, and it seemed to make sense to start applying the key concepts in the module within our own practices. We determined that applying what was in the course would move us closer to our goals. And the supervisory development course is based on latest research and best practice on these topics. So we feel pretty confident that this approach will get us closer to where we want to be. When you and I started working on this project, Amanda, we interviewed all the senior directors within OHR to determine what the common practices for performance management are within our units and what those directors would like to see happen. And it was clear that there was no common practice. For some OHR units, what we'll be talking about over the next half hour or so will be fairly similar to what happens now. To others, it will be a change. The performance management process will move us closer to both a common OHR approach and a more likely goal achievement. And LTD's role in this is to provide you with tools and information to make the process simpler and easier. So what does this really mean? What it means is that our approach to performance management will be much more effective as a process that begins with goal setting, which, by the way, OHR has its own goal setting template. And as you can see on the bottom of the slide, that's available at z.umn.edu/OHRPM. This is the same template that we shared with you on June 6th. And Amanda and I have been practicing using the template as we've been developing the materials for this webinar. We now use the template, and Amanda fills in her information and then shares it with me via Google Docs. I add comments and we discuss them at our next check-in. Then before we meet the next time, Amanda updates the goals template again based on her progress and then shares it with me and we talk about it. And we'll be doing that every month. And then when it's performance review time, we'll both have a record of all that we've discussed throughout the years. So we start with those goals and then have ongoing check-ins. And then formal evaluation. By goal setting and ongoing check-ins, we're preparing ourselves for the formal evaluation through the whole process instead of frantically trying to do all these things at the end. We actually have a really cool video on traditional versus effective performance management, so make sure to check out the supervisory development course module and watch it later. That same video was the pre-work for the last OHR all staff meeting on June 6th. Having these conversations can be a little overwhelming when you aren't used to having them or haven't had time to prepare. To help that, everyone in OHR, both staff members and supervisors, will receive a monthly email with some questions to help you prepare for the monthly conversations. Most people have a hard time coming up with their best answers on the spot, so the email will help you prepare for that and hold each other accountable. Every month, you will receive a reminder to talk about goals, progress on goals, adjustment to the goals, along with some questions and suggestions about how to have the conversation. Things move pretty fast these days, so goals set in the fall can often change by the time we get to March. So this will allow for adjustments as needed. And by the way, your supervisor will determine when you'll be having the conversations and all the details around that. Though the emails will come out at a regular time each month, when you have the conversation will be determined at a local level. You and your supervisor also have the free range to do what works for you. Modify templates as you see fit. Just make sure you're having these conversations. At this time, we'd like to know if something is not yet clear or you're not sure about how this applies to you. Use the Q&A feature to the right of your screen to submit your questions. We'll answer a few now and at the end of the webinar. If we don't get to all the questions, we'll make sure to provide you with the answers at a later time.
So some of the questions we're looking to you to ask would be what's on your mind and how can we best support and help you through this process. We don't seem to have any questions yet, which is fine. It means we are crystal clear, Rosie.
Absolutely.
Which is just fine. But if you think of something as we continue this presentation, feel free to add your question. Oh, there is a question now. How does this tie in with merit pay? That's a great question. Rosie, do you want to take a stab at that?
I'll try. We really haven't gotten to the details of how that would work out at the end of the year. So I would assume this will encourage good conversations so that at the end, when it's time for decisions about things like merit pay, that there's plenty of data to look for each supervisor to look back over the year as a whole and determine what makes sense.
Okay, thank you, Rosie. And thanks for that question. Brandon, did you want to add anything?
Nope, I think that's just fine. Merit pay is something the university is doing. It will happen this year, and it is not directly tied to this, but this process should make it easier to make merit pay decisions because you'll have a better understanding for people's performance.
Okay, thank you. So if you have any additional questions, we'll get to them in shortly here. I'm going to go ahead and jump back in and talk more about these ongoing check-ins that we've been talking about so far. So going back to our graphic of performance management, and specifically to the middle where the core of this new process is the ongoing check-ins. So after you've set your broad annual goals with your supervisor, your check-ins should occur throughout the year. And we understand that a lot of you are already having check-ins, and that's absolutely wonderful. You want to keep doing what you're doing. Don't change anything, but the only thing that you do want to take a look at is how much you are having a conversation about goals and development and the topics that we're talking about today. So there are 3 things that happen during check-ins: discussing goals, and your supervisor will be able to provide coaching and feedback, and then you'll be evaluating your progress, and your supervisor can evaluate your progress during that time as well. So an ongoing check-in is really just a conversation about the goals and just talk about what's going well and what could be going better. It doesn't need to be formal or complicated. So again, if you're having weekly check-ins with a supervisor, you could add these conversations in your weekly check-ins. But if there's not time to do that, then just make sure that you make time at least once a month to talk about these additional things. And as a 2-for-1, you'll be establishing effective feedback and coaching practices at the same time. And a lot of us might get nervous about the word feedback. And we're actually just talking about moving to a discussion of what's going on and what's working, what's not. So you don't have to be nervous about the word feedback. It's a different and more conversational approach that we're trying to take. So as we discussed earlier, you could use the goal setting template as one piece of the conversation. And ongoing check-ins are also the key to on-the-job learning, which is the single most important way that we can improve and grow at work. And this is where all the action is. This is from the time the goals are set until the time the review happens, this is actually where you're going to get the most benefit. So in the monthly emails that you and your supervisor will receive starting in October, development will be one of the topics. And the term development can mean many things. So for some people, it could be moving upward into the organization. To others, it could be having a wider impact rather than moving up, or it can mean picking up some new skills. like learning how to use some new software or how to do things in a new way. And so all of that is development, and it will provide you with new abilities, which will make OHR more capable as well. In our fast changing world, we all have to pick up new and advanced skills, regardless of our position. So take the time to discuss this with your supervisor so it can be easier for the things that you want to do to happen. And a supervisor who knows what new skills you want to develop will find it easier to fit that into your regular work. So the conversation is more likely to make that happen. In addition to the goals template, we also have a check-in template that you can modify to your liking and help you keep track of your conversations. So here's just a sample of what the top of the template looks like. So during your first check-in, you'll definitely want to agree on the roles and responsibilities between you and your supervisor or you and your team members so that your expectations are set and agreed to right away. So the common roles and responsibilities for direct reports and supervisors are as follows. So if you're a supervisor, your role is to communicate vision and strategy and clarify your employee's role in the big picture, provide clear expectations for results and behaviors, or the what and the how of the work being done, and define what success looks like, and then follow up by bringing goals and expectations into regular feedback and coaching conversations. In the same conversation, your supervisor will encourage you or should encourage you to take ownership of your own career and development, and you're setting goals and seeking opportunities and asking for guidance when needed, and making sure that you're asking questions about your supervisor's expectations and goals, and then to be proactive when the work seems misaligned with broader goals. And then, of course, to seek and act on feedback. So we're trying to create this culture of feedback in which people not only give feedback, but they also ask for it too. So all of this is referred to as development coaching, which is a very positive thing. So coaching will always be a part of a good check-in. And if you're not exactly sure what coaching looks like, you can check out the Coaching Quick Guide in the Supervisory Development course in the module on feedback and coaching. It's Module 1. Right now, I'll just do a quick summary of the key points. So coaching is actually a two-way street. As individuals, we are all responsible for having the self-awareness and the motivation to receiving ongoing feedback and support. And your supervisor can support you with new skill development by providing you with practice opportunities and assessment or reflection of how things are going. And it's a continuous loop. We can always be improving ourselves. So accomplishing our goals and learning and applying new skills requires us to have the self-awareness to recognize what we need to learn and the motivation to do it. So without those, it's really hard to move forward. And since Rosie is my supervisor, we're going to demo a simple check-in that hits on some of the key points that we've been sharing. So, hi, Rosie.
Hi, Amanda. How's everything going?
Going pretty good. I finally completed the task of the performance management webinar for OHR staff.
That's really exciting. Good job. Going forward, we need to talk about roles and responsibilities for these check-ins, and we'll want to make sure your goals are written and you're making progress on them.
That makes sense to me, and I'll use the check-in template to take notes within Google Docs.
I think that's a really good idea for us to do that. That way we can look back and be sure what we agreed to. And we've already decided to use that to share the template. So do you think it's working okay?
Yeah, it seems to be working okay. I put information into the template, and then it's helpful when you comment, and then when we get together, then we can talk about it.
So why don't we talk about how you're going to review your goals and how we'll review your goals and the progress on them. So back at our team retreat a couple of weeks ago, we talked about how everyone on our team needs to get more knowledgeable about all of our programming. So when you and I met a couple of weeks ago, we decided it would be good for you to learn more about the leadership program that Jenny is leading right now. So we've agreed it would be a good goal for you to work with Jenny to get more familiar with that. Have you been able to work on that one?
Yes, so Jenny and I are going to meet about that, and then there's time this fall when she's on vacation, so I'll fill in for her. So at our next check-in meeting, it would be good for us to talk about how that went.
Oh, that's really exciting because a great deal of the material in that course is helpful for all the work we do, and it'll give you a stronger background as you move into it.
Now, I'm also wondering if I should take any leadership courses to learn more, specifically about assessment. What would be the approach I should take?
Well, I think that's really exciting because I see you getting into that work heavily next year. So we need to get started now. And I've got a great book that goes over the basics of consulting and assessment and the KSAs that you need for that. So I'm going to get that for you and you can read it and figure out what the particular skills are that you need to work on because I know you've got plenty of skills already. So what are the areas that could be developed? So I'll get you the book right away and we can talk about it more at our next check-in when we think about how to build those skills.
That sounds great, and I'm looking very forward to that.
So for our next check-in, you're going to update the progress on your goals, share that with me, and you'll look through the book so we can start to get really specific about what you need to be working on.
Sounds like a good plan. Thank you.
And thank you.
You're welcome. So that's an example of a good check-in, very informal. We touched on my goals, and then Rosie was informally evaluating me on my progress and how I'm doing so far. And then she provided coaching so that I can continue to meet my goals and develop. So it doesn't have to be complicated. It's just about being more intentional. And again, you're probably already having these conversations, but the key is to make sure that you're talking about the right things. So I'm just going to pause there and get back to some of the Q&A that has been coming in just to see what's going on. So we have a question about how will this change the format of the comprehensive report we submit at the end of the year? And so again, this is kind of along the lines of the answer to the merit pay is that we're working on coming up with more of the details. And so with that comprehensive report, I'm assuming that the performance review is the way that I'm reading that, what that's going to look like, the format of that. We're working on those details as well.
And we'll keep you informed as we go.
Yeah, and I just to weigh in on that, the general format of those is going to be the same in the past. Everyone will get a rating. We're still doing ratings, and the reviews will be focused on achieving the goals that you've had throughout the year, as well as how you went about achieving those goals. And so as you do the things that we're talking about in this webinar, you'll have all of the information that you'll need to write those reviews. So it should be actually a lot easier to put together the reviews this year. So the details of what those review forms will look like, there will be more to come on that, but generally speaking, they're not going to change. They'll just be, like, I think, a lot easier to write and probably a lot more useful for structuring conversations about development.
Thank you, Brandon and Rosie, and for the person that submitted that question. So I'm going to turn it back over to Rosie. Before I do that, just again, feel free to put in additional questions as they come up. But I'm going to turn it back over to Rosie, who's going to talk more about where you can find some of the templates and the other resources that we've talked about today.
So thanks, Amanda. Our goal is that by the time you get to formal evaluation in the spring, it should be a simple summary without any surprises of the conversations that have happened during regular check-ins through the year. So that's why it's important to start with setting some good goals and then having check-ins. So why not start this process now if you haven't already and continue through the next year? Now that you have a sense of what's going to happen, let's take a look at the more in-depth material that we have that provides some background. You can find the OHR performance management information at supervising.umn.edu. That's the site, and there's a tab there called SDC in Action. There you will find the goal setting and check-in templates, as well as a collection of the monthly emails that we'll be sending out, and they're going to start in October. Also, if you want more information about the performance management process, it may be helpful to take a look at the supervisory development course that we've developed for supervisors at the university. This is an online self-paced course and is open to anyone. Since most of you are not supervisors, you may not have even seen this information, but you're welcome to go to that site and take a look. It will give you a sense of the perspective that your supervisor is taking. If you are a supervisor, most of what we are covering today is a repeat of the Managing and Evaluating Performance webinar offered this past March. But as you may have noticed, this webinar is tailored specifically to OHR. And now Amanda will tell you about next steps.
All right. So the next step would be to talk to your supervisor, or if you are a supervisor, talk to the people on your teams about what you've heard today and about things you want to change or do differently about how you're conducting your check-ins. And start or continue your check-ins anytime. We're going to have the monthly emails come out at the beginning of the month. And so, as Rosie mentioned earlier, it's up to you to continue to meet as often as it works for you. We're not dictating any of that. We just want to give you tools and resources and things to talk about in your check-ins. So then next Thursday is the next all OHR staff meeting on September 14th. And Rosie and I will be back, and Brandon as well. And we're not going to be there the whole time, that whole 8:30 to 10, but we do have some activities for you to do, kind of like we did with the goal setting template in June. So we'll have some things to touch on what we talked about today. We may do some partner work. We'll see. And so look for that first monthly email at the beginning of October. And so some of the topics in those emails are going to include conversations about not only performance, but potential and readiness, employee engagement and career development, and a values and motivation exercise, and much more. So we're really looking forward to putting those together for you and having you utilize them in your conversations so that they're much more fruitful. So we have time now for any final Q&A. And so the other question in mind for you to think about is, what do you still need to know that you haven't heard today? Or maybe it's not a question you have, but maybe a comment. How are you feeling about this process? Are you excited? What is on your mind? I'll get to questions in just a moment, but the other thing that you should know is, yes, we're done quite early, but that's intentional because we want you to take the time to go to the supervising.umn.edu site in the SDC and Action tab and then take a look at what's out there and take a look at the templates and get started on some of those conversations. Taking a look at the questions here. Okay, a couple of questions have come in. Is the employee responsible for scheduling the monthly check-ins with the supervisor? I would say that the employee and the supervisor are both responsible for coming up with a plan for that. It's not just the employee. And if they're already meeting on a weekly basis, perhaps take some time out in one of those weekly check-ins to have these additional conversations. So that's the answer to that one. Should the goals be entered into the online evaluation system?
Yeah, we're encouraging you to use Google Docs for that, something that doesn't require entering it into a system. I guess that's kind of the answer to that question. The purpose of it is really just to facilitate conversation and development and performance discussion. So some units within OHR currently, I believe, use Google Docs. In LTD, we often use Google Docs for that kind of thing. So that's inexpensive, it's free for us, and it's easy and everybody can use it. So that would be our recommendation.
Getting a copy of the OHR wide goals, or can we get a copy? Yes, I believe so. Is Kathy going to talk about that next?
Yeah, those are being in the process of being updated, and they're just about done. We had last year a set of goals, and we have another set this year. Sort of iterated them, updated them. So those will be shared.
We'll track those down for you. And then their question is, can we get a copy of the department goals? And so if you have department goals, I would definitely ask your manager, your supervisor, your director for that information. And are the slides available for review? We'll put the slides up on the site, the SDC in Action tab of the supervising.umn.edu. And then, was this recorded? Yes, it was a recorded webinar. So we will definitely put that up. I know a lot of folks were not able to attend live today, but another good idea is to watch the recording as a team and just talk about it, talk about what you're hearing, and the recording will always be up there for you to reference. Okay, anything else? Well, if you do have additional questions, feel free to reach out to myself, Amanda Wolford, or Rosie Berry, and we'll be happy to assist you. We will see you next Thursday at the All OHR staff meeting. Thanks everybody for attending.